Hello everyone, I'm Kyron, and the other day I received a comment suggesting that I should make a tier list based on how useful all the costumes in Balan Wonderworld are, considering how I was making a tier list related joke in that video. But before I jump into that video, I just want to apologise for some problems that occurred during the live stream. There are multiple moments where I'm off screen, and there are also multiple moments where I put something on my desk and the mic picks that up. This has been a good learning experience though, as I know what to look out for in future videos. I hope you enjoy the video regardless. One last thing though, thank you for all the support so far. I am so close to hitting 300, and I would love it if you could just keep showing me that support by subscribing to the YouTube channel, by leaving a like, and commenting what your favourite costume is in the game. Even if it is just based on appearances. The content that I promised at 300 will release, but I'm also close to deadlines with my uni work that has to take priority for a little while. Once that's out of the way, expect to see a lot more content. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Yeah, I guess I can get started here. So welcome to the stream, everyone. If you're watching this on YouTube, because I will be uploading the VOD, please consider checking out my Twitch channel. The link, right there, twitch.tv/Kyron. I stream a lot of Balan Wonderworld gameplay at the moment, and yeah, I feel like you'd enjoy it. There's a lot of cool speedruns, bit of banter goes on. Usually if there's a new discovery in the game, I'm the first to try and implement it, at least, except for the Balan % runs because those suck right now. But regardless, let's begin. Let's start the stream. And yes, today we are actually going to be ranking the costumes from Balan Wonderworld. Not based on the art, which this tier list is suggesting. We're actually going to be basing this off of how useful they are in the speedrun. And yeah, this is going to be kind of interesting, I think. Because I have some opinions. And my opinions are kind of deadly. For me, usually I get, attacked for my opinions. Oh, good lord. My opinion piece on Balan Wonderworld that's coming up soon is going to be a bit... I could go down in flames with that one. But, yes. Let's begin with the tier list. So... Oh. I see that I beat the YouTube commenters to the joke. Now you have to think of something original for once. Isn't that a shame? Okay, yeah, and now we're going to need like 5 minutes to fix this. Okay, we've now set up the tier list. Yeah, because that joke where I just did was not actually worth it. It was took a lot of time to sort this out. I also sorted these out by world, so we can just go through world by world. So, yeah, as I said, we're going to base this off usefulness. Also during this we found out that there is one costume that is not post-game that is missing from here, which is the Metal Band Boy from World 1. And if I had to place him anywhere, he'd be probably F tier. He doesn't do anything. Like, I was literally playing with him. All he does is jump, which is better than some things. But it's niche is to play music on a stage. And I thought, hey, that gives you some tears, doesn't it? Only gives you 4 yellow tears. So it's F tier. It's gonna be F tier. So starting with World 1, let's get the immediate F tier out of the way. Elastiplant. Like, is this like a no-brainer or not? Because this thing doesn't do anything. It can technically jump, but its jump is worse than a normal jump. Its actual stretching ability doesn't actually do anything for you, when instead you could have actually jumped. This costume is probably the worst in the game, or tied with one of the worst in the game. And speaking of one of the worst in the game, let's get Dainty Dragon out of the way. That's also in F. It cannot jump, so, it's already kind of below the Elastiplant, maybe above Elastiplant, because at least it can attack enemies, which is decent. It has a little bit of a projectile, even though the projectile's a bit terrible, and that projectile can break brittle blocks, so that's at least something. The level it's given in isn't really useful for it though, because it actually can't really do much. Like, yeah, it has a projectile, but it can't reach these distant blocks that you think it would be able to reach. So it's gonna be F tier from me. And let's move on to Pounding Pig. I think Pounding Pig is a So Pounding Pig is useful for, I'm gonna put it in C for now. It has like this little flap ability, which is kind of nice, over its jump. So its jump is better than like quite a lot of costumes in the game by just default, and you know, it didn't even need that. Additionally, yeah, it has a few niches where it can hit these pegs, and the only real one it can do that on is one boss, and it can also do it in 9 boss, but it isn't really required anymore for the quick kill. So it's definitely niche as hell, which is basically what C is. But I also think this costume is really uncomfortable to use because literally that pounding thing makes like jumping accuracy awful. It makes like I tried using Pounding Pig on 3-1 to do like minimum switches, and it is actually terrible because you can't like jump very easily on those mushrooms because you just ground pound a lot, and I feel like that really hinders it. Honestly, I'm thinking C tier for it because it's really early in the game as well. I feel like having a costume that is unlockable early in the run is really good. I think Tornado Wolf is better than Pounded Pig, and I think it's a B tier, personally. And I think this because this thing just has more uses than the Pounding Pig. Like, so for starters, it breaks brittle blocks, which, you know, the Dainty Dragon has, but Dainty Dragon's kinda just shit. You know what? I actually agree with AC. That's an E tier right there. But yeah, Tornado Wolf breaking brittle blocks makes progression through World 1 nice and easy. It's also very good for the mini boss in 1-2 in some categories. You know, we kind of don't do the mini boss in like any %, but it's, you know, it's all right. It, you know, does that job, but it's also really good against the World 1 boss because it can deflect tornadoes. And it's pretty good for the first and third phase, which is more than Pounding Pig can do. So I feel like B tier is a pretty good place where it belongs, honestly. As for Jumping Jack, Jumping Jack is A tier. May argue S, but the problem with Jumping Jack is that it's hindered by being an early game costume in a way. And it's very much outclassed when you get to like later costumes in this game. So, for example, like you can do some cool techniques with it, like the delayed flutter helps you get a lot of distance in the air. But when it comes to getting distance in the air, you could be using Soaring Sheep. If you need height, you could be using Double Jumper, essentially. So yeah, I definitely think that Jumping Jack is A tier. If, say, like Soaring Sheep and Frost Fairy and Double Jumper, they were like, say, late game costumes, Jumping Jack would most likely be S tier. But it can be replaced so quickly where you basically can only do like 4 levels with Jumping Jack before it becomes redundant. So it's going to sit in A tier, I think. So now let's get on to World 2. So, I'm going to put Bell Blow in E tier, I think. I know like I made the joke that he would be in the trash, but I haven't got a trash, so. And I'm just going to be real here. At least Bubble Blower can kind of do something in a way. Compared to Elastiplant, you know, at least it has that option to cross the gap in like 2-1, and it can cross, you know, just some gaps. But the bubble is terrible in a way that you just don't want to be using it. I just can't see this being any higher than E tier. It can ride air currents. Well, I say it can ride air currents, but it basically makes a whoo noise and then doesn't do anything. So it's definitely just a bad costume all around. Like, it doesn't need to exist. So yeah, I'm basically just going to keep Bubble Blower E tier. It's not good. Let's do the Teleporter. I think Teleporter sits in a... I feel like this is going to be a C tier costume. Teleporter doesn't really do too much, but it is like this costume that you can't skip, essentially. It's like, you need it for a statue in 9-1, and you need it for a statue in... Well, you can use it over Bulldozer in a statue for like 4-2, and I think that's pretty good. You could technically use it in 2-2 if you wanted to, but I don't see any point. In 80%, he is not used at all, which does hinder him, but we're also thinking about this in multiple categories, so I think AGS, he gets put into C tier, 80% he's basically going to be D tier, but I'm pretty happy with him being bottom of C tier for now. He's definitely worse than Pounding Pig, but he's definitely not D tier, I don't think. As for Jelly Jolt, Jelly Jolt's an A tier. The reason being is that it can swim for starters, maybe not as fast as Dynamic Dolphin here, but it's, you know, it can swim, so you can progress through 2-1 using it, you can progress through 2-2 if you wanted to as well. The issue with the Jelly Jolt, however, is that, yeah, it does swim rather slow. But what makes it good is the fact that it's very useful for 12 boss, for dealing with that retaliation phase that would otherwise lose you a lot of time. And it can also... It's also really, 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 really good against Lance. Like, Lance kind of just gets bobbed by Jelly Jolt. You can even use Jelly Jolt in 12-2 if you wanted to kill the enemies, and that would absolutely be fine as well. I think A tier is solid for it. Let's do Dynamic Dolphin then. And honestly, this might seem controversial, but it's going to be B tier. We're only using Dynamic Dolphin because swimming with it is slightly faster than Jelly Jolt, but that's all we're using it for essentially, is just swimming. It doesn't have the offensive capability of a Jelly Jolt, which kind of blows. It's definitely, you know, it's definitely not C tier, but it's definitely B tier. Double Jumper, on the other hand, S tier. Like, no brainer. The fact that you can jump twice is great. It makes it one of the best vertical climbing costumes in the entire game. Probably in this tier list, it is probably the best vertical climber. I may even argue for S+, but I guess I'll have to see. In fact, yeah, I'm going to say S+. It is S+. It's absolutely broken. It's such a good costume. It's used in so many levels during the run. And, like, yeah, it just synergizes well with either Frost Fairy or Soaring Sheep. It just... You can throw it in your lineup and it'll most likely be helping you out most of the time. Okay, here we got our first D tier. Sickle Slinger. Can't say that. Sickle Slinger. That's how you say it. Problem with Sickle Slinger being that it's basically going to be an inferior Sickle Slayer. Well, but we'll get to that in a bit. We only use it in AGS for 2 statues. Technically, we could do... technically in AGS, we could just sacrifice do a sacrifice instead of picking up Sickle Slinger, but it is also pretty useful for dispatching enemies at the end of the level. Still, you know, can't jump. The projectile's kind of awkward to hit enemies with, so it definitely loses points there for being kind of bad at dealing with enemies, even though it can. But it's definitely not as bad as Dainty Dragon or Bubble Blower, so it's definitely going to be D tier. As for the Dusk Butterfly A tier. Like, I remember I used to make the argument that Dusk Butterfly was C tier, but that's when we found Dusk Launching. And if you don't know what Dusk Launching is, it's a technique where you can ride air currents with Dusk Butterfly. And there's I think there's 2 in the entire game that this works on. But if you get on these certain air currents, you start pressing A, you just get launched super high into the air. So yeah, that makes Dusk Butterfly really, really good because you can, in 80% you can skip all of 4-1, and in AGS you can use it to grab a statue really quickly in 9-1. Additionally, you can use it to skip 11-1 if you choose to, in say like a category where you're not grabbing statues at all. You could then use it in 11-2 to get to the end of the level if you wanted to as well. That's also something you could do. Itsy Bitsy Elf. I think this is going to sit high in the C tier. Maybe even B tier. Because this costume opens how many doors? I think 3 in AGS. Actually, that's not that many, is it? But, like, yeah, it is a costume that we have to use a lot during the run. And it does kind of, like, bother me that, like, we have to use it in the first place. But at the same time, it's not like Sickle Slinger where we could pick it up, but, you know, we could just not get away with it. Yeah, it's basically equal to Teleporter, essentially, as VG said, because, you know, there's just some trophies in AGS where we do need this costume to collect them. So it's definitely going to sit there. So Web Wrangler. This is going to be a... This is tough. I think Web Wrangler is going to be a C tier as well. Maybe... This one's hard. Yeah, I'm leaning towards D. So in any percent, we only need it to climb up 1 web wall. Actually, technically 2. But it's in 1 level, essentially. We only use it in 1 level, then we sacrifice it. And then we pick it up again in free boss. It does do really well in free boss, but you also don't need it at the same time. I feel like this niche is so singular, and then the other time is just preference thing. So it's definitely a D tier costume, I think. As for the Lovely Lantern, obviously S+, no. This is F tier, honestly. It's not useful. Yeah, I think that Lovely Lantern is F tier because it's basically used for one statue that we don't even use it for. Let's do Laser Launcher. Laser Launcher is going to be a D tier. Between Web Wrangler and the Sickle Slinger, honestly. We have to use it for a single trophy in 4-2. For AGS, it's not used in any percent whatsoever. Any costume in 4-2 exclusive is not used in 80% because we skip 4-2. But yeah, Laser Launcher, it would be F or it would be E tier if we didn't have to use it. Yeah, I agree there. Just D tier. It's basically one statue and that's it. It's a one and done costume. Let's get the F tier out of the way, Happy Horn. It's literally useless. Like, yeah, you get to perform on stage, that's cool, but you only get 4 tiers for doing so. And yeah, that's all it does. It just, yeah, it gives you 4 tiers. And I'm not talking about 4 big tiers, I'm talking about 4 small tiers. That's all the performance is worth. So you get a terrible reward for picking it up and you lose time for getting it anyway. As for Box Fox, top of E. Top of E. I know a lot of people are going to think like the Box Fox is F tier, but at least it can actually break iron, which is basically something that I wish a lot more costumes in this game had the ability to do. So Box Fox being able to break iron is pretty pog. Don't really use the costume, but the idea that you can use it is good. And VG's unsubbed because of it, but yeah, Box Fox, E tier. S+ tier for some, but yeah, it's E tier, honestly. If we could control it, it would definitely be way better. Maybe it would be D tier, maybe even C tier. Maybe even a chance for B, but no. The fact that it's random, you can't control when you're in the box form, it's just terrible. Aero Acrobat, I'm gonna say it's a B tier. It's pretty pog, actually. Like, it's really good for 4 boss. If you really wanted to, you could quick kill 4 boss and get 3 statues if you know the timing to do using the Aero Acrobat. That is a really good thing that you can do with this costume. And it's also, you're able to skip the mini boss in 4-1 using it as well. So it's pretty cool there. Depending on when you do 4-2 in your run, you can use it to cross some gaps, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I'm going to say that Aero Acrobat is B tier. Whilst I don't do it, you could use Acrobat in Lance and be fine with it. You could also use it in combat, which is kind of cool, kind of pog. So let's get our S tier costume in the mix. It's going to be Soaring Sheep. I think Soaring Sheep is a solid S tier character. If you match the jump button with Soaring Sheep, you basically mitigate the slowdown that you would get from floating, and you also add a cost for a very slightly faster descend. But that mitigation of the airspeed makes Soaring Sheep so good for traveling in the air that it's just a very, very strong costume for like mid-game, early to mid-game. The moment you get Soaring Sheep, you can then go unlock Double Jumper and use these 2 costumes until you've unlocked Frost Fairy, essentially, and you'll be fine with those 2 costumes. It's absolutely strong. It's amazing. So honestly, tiers don't really mean much to me, so Lucky Egg, as funny as it is an F tier. Essentially, if you jump once with this costume, you lose it. Basically, jumping this game counts as taking damage for this costume. Lickshot Lizard, on the other hand, Lickshot Lizard is D tier. I hate Lickshot Lizard, but it has some use. So yeah, the dealio with Lickshot Lizard is that what makes it kind of bad and why I hate it is that if you use inverted camera like I do, it's just what I'm used to, that's my personal preference, then the first person controls are also inverted and it makes using the costume kind of bad. Luckily for 5 boss, if you're using it, it's not that bad. All you have to do is kind of just face the boss and it will automatically lock on. That's kind of cool. But if the moment you need to make an adjustment, you're screwed. Additionally, you can't move during this first person control, which is to be expected, but it kind of still sucks. And all the hooks that it is basically used for, we don't need to use Lickshot Lizard at all. We can either go around or over or just, cross the gap that it's intending to cross. So it sits in D tier because you can use it in 5 boss, but that's about it. Let's do Hothead. F tier. Real talk. Is another useless costume. All of Hothead's puzzles are like Hothead's puzzles are like the easiest thing to skip in the game. You've got this giant wall, right? You can just go around it. You have a puzzle room where you have to open up a cage. You can literally go to the back of the cage and you can hit the switch. You have a door. Oh, you can just go. There's like a little platform outside the room. You can jump to that platform and then jump to the bridge after that. Yeah, Hothead is useless. Now we're onto a big boy. A tier. Maybe even, actually, honestly, yeah, this is S tier. Sickle Slayer is really, really good. Yeah, so the deal with Sickle Slayer is that it's like Sickle Slinger, except it can break metal, which Box Fox can do. This is the first metal breaker of the tier list, and the reason why it's so high tier is because you can grab it as early as World 5, so you could grab it, you can grab it very early in the run, and you can make it last for so long in AGS. This is an AGS costume, by the way. We don't see this in any percent. Yeah, essentially, being able to break ice and iron is super appreciated for this costume, and like, the fact that it's projectile as well is great. This also means it can defeat Spike Nagari, such as the spiky enemies in 4.1 and the spiky birds in 5-2, so that's also very good there. Additionally, the projectiles can also grab trophies from afar, albeit we only really use it in like one place. But it's an option that is available with this costume. It's just very useful in AGS. Alright, Guardian Bird. I used to say was A tier, but my opinion of this costume has lessened over time, and I think it sits in C tier. Like, I used to be a big fan of the projectile that it shoots out for Lance, but then I've also kind of realized that Jelly Jolt just does Lance way better, that there's like no point really using it. The only reason why we use it now is for fight boss for the retaliation phase, and that's it. But I do like Guardian Bird a lot, and I think the projectile is still very useful for combat. It's just not nearly as good as Jelly Jolt. And let's discuss the Chrono Bunny, which I think is going to sit in D tier. Honestly, it doesn't really do much. Yeah, it's able to resist being frozen in time against 6 boss. Yeah, that's kind of cool. But as I said, the Web Wrangler is really good against free boss, but that's still in D tier. And then basically, similar to Web Wrangler, you're only using it in one place to go through this one mirror that is, exclusive to the Chrono Bunny. And yeah, and once we've done that, we're done with the costume. And that's in AGS only. We use this in 80% in the same way that we use it in AGS for the boss. Yeah, you can use it to get a quick hit on 6 boss. You don't even need it really. So I guess it basically solidifies its placement in D tier. But yeah, you can use it and you will save a little bit of time using it. So yeah, I think this is a good D tier costume. Gear Prince. I hate this guy. Like, I want to say it's basically a D tier costume, but the implication behind what it actually does is really freaking annoying. And yeah, I agree with Fiji. This is E tier between Box Fox and Bubble Blower. Because, like, yeah, it's D tier because it actually gets usage and, like, it has a niche that it fulfills. And it is, yeah, technically is a one and done. But we would be able to save so much time in the speedrun if this thing just didn't exist, essentially. If the door that it basically unlocks could be skipped, then, we wouldn't have any need for this. Like, basically, the best use we get out of this is as a sacrifice for a statue in AGS. Otherwise, this statue is useless. We don't need Gear Prince for any of the gears in this game because there are costumes that can just skip it later in the run. Pounding Duck. I don't understand the point of this costume. It's Pounding Pig, but a little bit better, but also a nightmare to get hold of, and I feel like that's something that's also important to consider. How out of the way is this costume to get? And this costume is really far out of the way. Like, you need Teleporter, you need a key, and you need Ladder Man, and it's like, why? Why, when all you're going to get is a slightly better Pounding Pig when Pounding Pig's not very good to start with? This costume sits in E tier, honestly. And it sits in E tier because it's basically just, there's no point in grabbing it really. It's got use, it's got usage, but it's not good. It's not worth getting. Pumpkin Puncher. Pumpkin Puncher's D tier. Honestly, better than Lickshot Lizard. You use it in 6 boss to get a hit very quickly. And that's all you're going to use it for. And I think technically it can hit some statues from far away using the fists, but it doesn't get used in AGS for that at all. It can break brittle blocks, that is kind of cool, but also what brittle blocks are we breaking with this costume? So yeah, I think this sits in D tier because it only has like 1 use in the boss. It could be used in more places, but it's just not. Aircat. This is going to be a hard one. I'm not going to put it in the A tier. It's actually going to sit top of B tier. So beginner runners can use this over Soaring Sheep to get double jumper early and to do some gap jumps. But it's also worse than Soaring Sheep in that regard. It's a little bit more out of the way than Soaring Sheep to the fact that like you're going to lose time for going to get this costume. And you're also going to... Yeah, it's also just not as good as Soaring Sheep. It's also not as good as Frost Fairy, which we'll get into a bit later. So it basically doesn't really get much use. It's pretty good in minimum costumes. It's actually very good in minimum costumes. You know what? If we're counting minimum costumes as an actual category here, I agree. I think, yeah, honestly, it doesn't feel right putting it in B tier. Yeah, A tier. Then we have the Floating Flower. Floating Flower is essentially Soaring Sheep, but a little bit better, but also acquired way too late into the run for it to be really worth using. It's definitely going to be a C tier for me. If this costume was accessible way earlier in the run, it may have gone up to an A tier. It basically doesn't do... It basically descends slower than Soaring Sheep. It descends faster than Soaring Sheep, which kind of is bad, but it does travel through the air faster. We can use it for 7 boss, and then we can use it for 8-1 to grab Frost Fairy. But other than that, we wouldn't be really using it. It can ride the air currents like Soaring Sheep, that's a fun fact, but it does make the camera awful as well. So Tackling Ball, I think, has potential to be useful. I think it could start being used in AGS to be a bit more useful than Sickle Slayer in some places. Because sometimes the projectile that Sickle Slayer has can be problematic. And I'm starting to think that maybe if we just use the Tackling Ball instead, that we could bypass some of these issues. And it also has some pretty cool movement. It can't jump, but then again, Sickle Slayer also can't jump. So I'm going to put Tackling Ball in C tier above Floating Flower. I think it has potential. Paladin Puncher, the same kind of goes for this, but this one's kind of out of reach and kind of out of the way, where I would happily put it in bottom of D tier. It breaks iron and is essentially Pumpkin Puncher, except the problem with it is that, you have it's kind of hidden away, and you have to go out your way to go get it. I do wish Paladin Puncher had more use though, but it is right now it's just not worth getting. You might as well just keep using Sickle Slayer essentially. Quad Cannon. Okay, so Quad Cannon, E tier. Like, what's the point of Quad Cannon? I honestly, I don't think Quad Cannon's F tier, because I understand that, like, how it can be used and how it can be useful, but yeah, at least it can do something. Because, it shoots 4 projectiles out at once, but you have to stand still for it, and that will always suck. But, you know what? It's the same reasoning as Hothead. It is F tier. Like, the projectile's just not good. It's annoying to use, it's frustrating, and yeah, honestly, downright bad. Speedy Cheetah is also going to be an E tier. This is because I'm not counting co-op in here. If this was co-op, it could be maybe an A tier, but we're not talking co-op here. Okay, I'm going to make some adjustments to this because AC makes a good point. This is going to be F tier. There's like no way that this is not F tier. And honestly, I'm starting to debate whether Bubble Blow should be E tier as well, maybe F tier. Yeah, Bubble Blow is F tier, straight up. You think Cannon is worse than Dragon? Honestly, yeah, I can see it. I can see Cannon being worse than Dragon, except Cannon can jump, which goes a long way. Amadeus, now we're getting into World 8 now. Amadeus, F tier, same reason, Happy Horn, no point using it. Get 4 tiers, is that all you're going to get? Hardy Hammer. Hardy Hammer, I'm going to put in top of D tier. The reason is it breaks ice and it breaks iron, which is really cool, but it moves super slow. It's really good for 8 boss, but that's all it's going to be good for. It's only going to be good for 8 boss. Because you don't want to use this in normal levels because of how slow it moves. You might as well just use Sickle Slayer, even if it is easier to use. Yeah, you can do a thing where you like charge up a thing and it can move faster, but you still have to like stand still to charge it, and yeah, it's not good. It's not good in that regard. It's definitely a one and done, but it has potential to be more useful. Seal Skater's E tier. Maybe even F. No, actually it's F tier. All it does is move slightly better on ice, and by that meaning like if you're on flat ground on ice, it moves at the same speed. So Seal Skater, F tier. It's just not good. When you're going down a slope as well, you gain speed regardless of the costume that you're using. So you can just use like Frost Fairy instead of the Seal Skater, and you'll be better off for it. The Frost Giant is Frost Giant's D tier. I'd say it sits around here in D tier. You can use it in 8 boss, and sometimes it may even be better use it in 8 boss over using like Hardy Hammer and Frost Fairy, but you know, that's all it's going to be used for. It's only going to be used for that, and even then you don't really need to use it. So yeah, it's D tier. It's immune to getting frozen, which is cool, but you can just switch costumes right as you're about to get frozen, and that will, you know, that will stop you from being frozen. Now S+, obviously this is where Frost Fairy belongs. Clearly it's Soaring Sheep, but doesn't travel as far. But it's also Double Jumper, but doesn't climb as high. But the fact that it can do both makes it so freaking good. You can use, basically, the moment you get Frost Fairy, you're set for the entire run. You can fly across gaps, you can climb up places, and you can do one thing that these two cannot do, which is get places that are higher than you and far away. This is what Frost Fairy can do that these two cannot do, and this is why it's going to be S+. It's literally the best costume in any percent. It's the best costume in AGS, and whilst it may not be the best costume in, say, all statues, theoretically with the post-game ones, it's definitely, you know, it's definitely the best in the game. Also, I'm not counting Balan costume in this. Balan costume would be in S++, but it's also really lame. So the Merry Ghost. So Merry Ghost's gimmick is that it can walk on poison. But hear me out. For one, I actually don't know where this costume is actually accessed. And two, there's actually a costume that can already do that and does more. This costume is honestly F tier. It's bottom of E tier, honestly. Like, yeah, I can see its niche being used, but I'm also about to reveal something huge during this video that's just going to make this costume outclass completely. Pounding Robot is a one and done costume used in 9 boss, and I'm going to put it in the same tier as Pounding Pig because it can break iron, but it's only used once. Maybe I will put this in D tier, and yeah. I'm happy with this, actually. I like this change. I don't think Pounding Pig's very good. And I think Pounding Robot's just as good, because getting that hit on 9 boss is super good. And it's just how to get the quick kill. Rail Runner. Rail Runner is similar to Gear Prince in the way that we kind of have to pick it up, but we can skip it if we want to, but it's faster to pick it up. It's not like we're actually forced to pick up Rail Runner. And Rail Runner has a cool glitch known as the Kite Train, where you can jump off the rail early and get into a glitch state where you get right to the end of the rail, which is kind of cool. It helps you save time there. It's a one and done. It's useful. It's D tier. Iron Panda. It's a very cool costume, but it just doesn't really do anything. Like, it's so easy to skip the section of the level that it's in. So it's gonna have to be E tier, I think. Happy Horn, F tier. What's the point? You're literally like you're basically just a sitting duck. That's the analogy, isn't it? You're a sitting duck when you use this costume. It takes ages to attack anything. The enemy could just move out the way if it wanted to. It's F tier. Like, there's no reason to use. What do I call this thing? Is it the Happy Blaster? Is that what it's called? Happy Blaster. That's it. Yeah, it's just a bad costume. There's like no way around it. Slow Tortoise. It's D tier. Maybe arguably E, because there is a way to skip using it now completely and is faster. But if you are unable to do that strat, then you can use it. It's E tier, honestly, I think. Yeah, Slow Tortoise. I don't think it can even fight Nagati, which is really bad, actually. It used to be useful, but then it got outclassed by the fact that you can just switch costumes to beat 9 boss easier. Let's talk about Air Unicorn. An air unicorn's a tough one for me, honestly. It doesn't see use in like optimal any percent, and it doesn't see any use in optimal AGS either. But I can see it being used in all statues because it's basically Aircat, but it travels much further than Aircat. The problem with it is it's accessed much later into the game and is quite out of the way to go get. So it's definitely good, but it's kind of like the same reason why Pounding Duck's E tier as opposed to being the same tier as like Pounding Pig and Pounding Robot. It's like, it's a hassle to go get. But I can't ignore the fact it's really good, so I'm going to put C tier. X-Ray Ape. Honestly, this costume, kind of cool. But the thing about it is that all it does is reveal invisible blocks. It's not like these invisible blocks were intangible before X-Ray Ape came along. You can still walk on these blocks if you know where they are. And for that, I think this is going to be an E tier costume. Maybe even F. But I think it does more than some of the F tier costumes. It is going to be an E tier, I think. So I had to actually look up what this costume does. This is the Sneaky Lizard. So essentially it's like Lickshot Lizard, except it teleports to its target and it can teleport to tiers as well. And I think that's really kind of cool. I don't know whether it can go through walls like Teleporter. I'm going to need someone to fact check me on that. But at the same time, it's so late into the run that you don't really want to be using it. I think it's an E tier costume, honestly. Then we have the Inky Blaster, which is going to be the other S tier costume of the game. And the reason why Inky Blaster is S tier is because it is just the best enemy killing costume out of this selection here. Like, the projectile is fast. It comes back immediately after you hit it. And yeah, so we use this in 10-1 to progress through the level. That's an obvious. That is basically, that would put it in basically D tier if it was just for that. But you take that costume into 12-1, you're killing the Nagati really quickly with that. If you take it to 12-2, you're killing the Nagati really quickly there too. And if you take that, you can even use it on the mini boss if you wanted to, that's fine. You can use it on 12 boss in any percent to get the hits in quick. You use it in 10 boss to score quick hits. And then you can take, and the best use for it, in my opinion, is 11-2, where you go against the mini boss and you can just snipe the boss 3 times from safe ground, and it's much faster than trying to jump on it with Frost Fairy, and it's way safer as well. It's a really good costume. You can even use it in Lance as well. I tended to stop doing it now. I use just Jelly Jolt really for Lance, but you can use Inky Blaster for Lance, and you know, you would be better off using it than certain costumes, let's put it that way. Double Trouble. I don't know what I think this thing basically makes like a remote control dummy, so you can walk on switches and like you can stand on switches and grab stuff with another one. Maybe useful in some places, but I might need to leave this one down to VG or someone else. I think it's either E or F. It's not good. I'm gonna have to put in E, I think. I see potential with it. I don't know like how 10% would work, but I know there's like a few eggs in that game that I think are inaccessible until you use Double Trouble, essentially. So you could use it there, but I don't know. It's a weird costume. So let's start with the Flame Blaster. It can walk on lava, it can shoot projectiles. That's kind of cool. I respect that. But it's also out of the way, it's slow to grab, it doesn't, you know, it will never save you time to go get it. But I respect it a lot, and I think it's E tier. I don't think this costume has potential at all. I'm going to be honest with you. I said that, yeah, it could be used in 11 boss, but I'm also about to blow your mind with that one as well. As for Water Blaster is a one and done costume. It cannot move when it charges. It's terrible for that. You can use it in Lance, but you can also use it in 11 boss. But the fact that when you charge it, you can't move is terrible. It's D tier. Iron Apollo, only used in AGS to grab 2 statues, is absolutely slow and horrible to use. No one enjoys using this costume, but because it has use, it has to sit in D tier. Basically, D tier its point is has use, but is bad, essentially. So yeah, D tier for Iron Apollo. It ascends in the air so slowly, like what's the point in using it? Really, let's be honest. Key Mouse. F tier. It's a costume that can essentially unlock costumes without a key. Which may sound cool on paper, but you don't need... Basically all the keys in this game are close to the costume that this costume pickup just doesn't do you anything. So yeah, honestly, Key Mouse F tier, what's the point in it? Ladder Man, you know, the Death Stranding one. I can't see Ladder Man being useful like at all. Real talk, it's just not good. Like, it's just outclassed by Double Jumper in most places. And then you can use it to get Pounding Duck, but when are we needing Pounding Duck other than all costumes? This costume is just F tier. Real talk, it's just bad. Okay, and now for a big reveal. Fixer Upper's B tier. Because I was saying earlier that I have discovered some stuff with this costume. And that stuff I've discovered is that this thing, the Fixer Upper, yeah, it can fix a mirror, and you know, which is useful for a costume grab in 9-2. But it can also walk on lava. It can walk on poison, which means you can use it in AGS for 11 boss to get a very, very free hit on the fireball. You can just camp in the lava and then just walk to the thing, jump on it, kill the boss really quickly. So yeah, Fixer Upper is pretty good. It's B tier in my opinion, and it's sick as well. I think Fixer Upper looks so sick. Invisible Man. I don't understand why this costume is useful at all, honestly. It's literally, I don't know what, like, well, it doesn't make Nagati not notice you, but what's the point in that, really? It doesn't really do much. It's not like it can hit invisible things. If, like, say invisible things couldn't be hit unless you used Invisible Man, maybe it would be good. It is just a pointless costume, which is a shame because it actually looks sick as well. Sunwalker, don't know the point of it. I've never used it, never will. Yeah, it stops time when it's... It stops time when it's stopped moving, but like you constantly want to be moving anyway, so what's the point? Let's be real. Volt Tiger is also F tier. It's only immune when you don't move. Okay, yeah, that's F tier then. Get out of here. And Vacuum Blaster is useful for 12 boss, useful for a statue in AGS. But that's all you're gonna see it for. It's like those two niches and then it's done. And you won't see it anywhere else. Actually, it can suck up a statue through the wall in 9-1, but we would have done 9-1 by the time we actually get this costume. It's just cool that you can do that. It might have more potential. I am going to put it bottom of C tier. And I think that's the tier list. I'm going to just check if there's anything that I can adjust. Air Unicorn's a hard one to place. I think it's B tier, honestly. I think the potential is way better than what Tacting Ball's potential is. But it's, you know, and if that potential's met, then that's going to go up to A tier. But right now, we don't know. X-Ray Ape, useless, technically. Sneak Lizard doesn't really do anything. In fact, X-Ray Ape is, once you know the game, it's useless, let's be honest. Then we have Merry Ghost, outclassed by the Fixer Upper. And then this costume could do some stuff, but it doesn't. And I think I agree with my D tiers here. These are all very solid. I agree with my B tiers. These are good costumes. C tiers, they're okay. A tiers, these are very good costumes, but they're just not S tier costumes. And S plus is just a cut above the rest. Yeah, so I think that's where I stand on the tier list. And that was the tier list. Thank you all for watching. Remember to subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.